So we're going to use some of this to fortify our liquid that we're going to cook our elk shanks in. So we're going to add some onions and seasonings to this and a little bit of that broth. And then we're going to slow cook all these shanks. And all these shanks then we're going to literally cook it to the point where the meat falls off the tendons and the connective tissue, and all that fascia will curl up. So we're just going to pull the meat off. So in a sense, we're making corned beef. We'll take the meat all off those tendons and fascia, and then we'll use that for like a corned elk shank hash for breakfast. Okay, so we got these elk shanks that we put into this brine, the Morton Tender Quick brine. We add all that pickling spice in there to make this taste almost like corned beef. Again, this beautiful piece of meat right here would work great on turkey legs and thighs, goose legs and thighs, breasts. So we're going to take this and wash that brine off. We want to wash that off good, just get that salt off there. If we were going to smoke this, preferably we would let this dry to get that skin formation, to get a nice rind on that smoke. So you can see how the color of the meat has changed by that injection on that brine. And basically what's going to happen is that connective tissue is really not going to break down, but we're going to pull the meat away from that. So if we wanted to make like a pulled venison shanks, to make like Philly cheesesteaks or barbecue, we'd do the same exact thing, just leave out the pickling spice. If you wanted to take, say, a beautiful piece of not top round or knuckle or bottom round, you could brine this, dry it, rub it with pepper and coriander, and make pastrami out of this. You know, hind leg of a bear works really good for that, because they have, usually in a ball bear, they have a lot of fat content and cover on there to make a nice pastrami. So we're going to wash all these, and then we're going to take them over and put them and cook them in some chicken broth with some onions and seasonings, and we're going to slow cook them all day long. And this is just another way to utilize one of the toughest cuts of meat on the animal, yet it has the most flavor. It has more flavor than the tenderloin because it works more. So I'm going to wash these off, and then we're going to the stock pot. So now we got our shanks all washed off. They're ready to go. We've got a nice stock pot on. We got a little bit of chicken base or that bouillon in there with that broth. So we're just going to knock everything on the floor like that with our spoon. And so we're going to throw some onion in there, and then we're going to take our shanks and just slow cook them in there. I wanted to get that water, that broth, warm enough, just because with all this meat going in all at one time. And you can see how that brine changed the outer fascia and that silver skin. Change the color of the meat. And we're going to slow cook this. When we take the meat out, we want to make sure that we keep that meat in some broth or in some liquid, because if we pull the meat out of there, it's called evaporative cooling. When that meat's really hot, you take it out, it cools and the evaporation goes up, and on a large piece of meat, then it tends to make it dry. So we'll cool that actually in some liquid, and then we'll start pulling the meat off those tendons. We're going to use some of this broth to cook some onions and potatoes for basically our elk hash for a breakfast course. Okay, now so we've got our shanks cooking in some broth with some onions and we threw some parsley stems in there and bay leaf, and so this is the shank that we had pickled or brined with the pickling spice. And what I'm looking for in there is what we call fork tender. So something braised, something that's roasted that we want fork tender, is always going to be well done. Means it's, you just stick it with a fork and it should fall off the fork. And so you're feeling the pressure. How hard does it take to put that fork in there, and what's that firmness? So it's getting there, but it's still probably got a couple more hours. But you can see how that brine and that pickling solution has changed the color. There's all that big connective tissue that this meat is going to literally fall off. And there's the color of your corned beef right here. I just tear that open, you can see the color of that meat. That's from the curing salt. So it's still got a ways to go. But I wanted to just show you when I say fork tender, that's not fork tender yet. So we're going to put it back in and let it simmer. So we brined our shanks, our elk shanks. We brined them overnight, we injected them, we washed them, and then we put them into a pot and we were slow cooking them. So we've been slow cooking these shanks all day long. So let's take a look and see what they look like in here. We've actually, so this is a recipe from the basic brine for elk shanks. And so what we have here is this elk shank, and is it fork tender? Well, let's just see. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that meat. Check that out. So it looks just like corned beef. Oh, that's hot. So that's elk shank. It's really hot, but it's really good. It's just like corned beef. And that has all the connective tissue on it right now. What we're going to do with this is we're going to take these out, put them into a bowl with some broth because we don't want them to dry up. And we're going to let them cool a little bit. Then we're going to put some gloves on and we're going to pull the meat off that real heavy connective tissue. And then we're going to take the broth, some of the broth, cook some onions and potatoes, and we're going to make very interesting style corned beef hash with poached eggs on it for breakfast this night for dinner. So this is what. So we'll take these out. And these, this is the connective tissue that I'm talking about. You see that? That right there is what gives, that's full of collagen. That's what gives stocks and broths and consommes their gelatinous gel when they cool down. You know, like when you grill chicken, you put it on a plate, put it in the fridge, and the next day you got that jello stuff stuck to the end of the chicken. That's exactly what we're talking about. So we got this. We're not going to use all of this, but we're going to pull the majority of this. We're going to put this over here. And so again, let me take this piece and put a knife to this. Check that out. Check that out. So we can just literally just pull that apart. There's the connective tissue that we want to pull this off of. So now we have pure corned beef. What do we make with this? We can make corned beef hash. We can put it in a food processor, make like deviled ham only out of corned beef. We can make Reubens out of it. We can take it and make a New England boiled dinner out of this. It eats excellent. Look at that. Look at that muscle. We just peel that off that connective tissue, and we got pure lean corned elk shanks for dinner and or for breakfast. But the most important thing here is that once we get this meat like this, that we get it under broth. And I'm going to take the broth, I'm going to run it through a wire sieve, because I want to use that broth for part of our breakfast dish. And this broth has all types of herbs, parsley stems, onions, some vegetable scraps that we cooked. But we're going to drain that and get that liquid in there. And then we'll put that pulled corn venison in the elk. And I want to taste this. is that good. Now that, when that cools, that'll set up like Jello because of all the connective tissue that was in that meat. So right now we're going to just spend a couple minutes and get that broth strained into here, and then we'll pull that meat and put it in here. And we're going to take some of the broth and cook some onions and potatoes in there for our breakfast dish. Okay, so now we got our brined shanks that we made like corned beef, only we made them out of elk shanks. And we're pulling the meat off the tendons and putting it in some of the broth that we cooked them in to keep it moist so it doesn't dry up. What we're going to do with the rest of the broth is we're going to strain out all of the spices and stuff like that and the parsley stems, and we're going to pour it over some onion and potato. Look at that, just enough. And we're going to cook this down and get that potato nice and soft, the onions nice and soft. And then we're going to take our corned elk shanks, the corned pickled elk shanks. We're going to take that meat and mix it in here, and we're going to simmer it even a little longer till the potatoes are soft and the onions are soft. It's going to be nice and thick. We're going to put it in a nice little ramekin with some broth and soft potatoes and meat, and it's going to be inner broth. And then we're going to poach an egg and put the egg on top. Then we're going to top it with some sriracha cream, and that's going to be our breakfast as an appetizer. We serve it as an appetizer for dinner, but you can put a couple eggs on it and you can have it for breakfast. So it's a different take on say corned beef hash for breakfast. Instead of making a dry hash that we would brown on a griddle or in a pan, we're going to serve it in a brothy, almost soupy consistency. And so again, it's just a different take. So you'll see that in just a couple minutes. Okay, we got some potatoes and onions that are done. We cooked them in part of the broth that we cooked these brined shanks in, that we made with the pickling spice to make it taste like corned beef. So what we're going to do, we're going to serve them in these bowls. We're going to poach some eggs, top them with some poached eggs. We're going to give them a little squirt of sriracha cream and a little greenery, and we're good to go for breakfast. So we'll take our slotted spoon or perforated spoon here and get this water moving a little bit. We have a little bit of acid in there, a little bit of vinegar, and a little bit of salt in there. The vinegar will help the whites set up and coagulate. We'll throw some salt in there. And we want a little bit of movement so that as it moves, the egg doesn't just stick on the bottom. So we're just going to move it around a little bit, pour that egg in that water, and let it move around. In the meantime, we're going to put our bowls together. So we're just going to come in here. We'll take some potato and onion. This is just like a appetizer or breakfast course for dinner. We could do a little bit more there. We'll take some of our hash, the corned elk shanks. What gave me this idea to do a recipe like this was my wife and our friends were out. We were in Vegas and we went to the Paris Casino Hotel, and we ordered something like this, and that's exactly what came out. It was in a nice broth, and so I'm using basically two different broths here, the broth from the meat and the broth from the potatoes and the onions. Just another way to make use of these products. My slotted spoon. Poached eggs got just a hair longer to go. A little bit longer. And I'm going to put 2 more in. Now, our first one here is pretty much floating. Put our poached egg up on top. I'm going to put a little bit of sriracha cream. A little bit of greenery. What the heck? Let's throw some peppercorns on there too. Give it a little bite and crunch. So here's our breakfast corned elk shanks with poached eggs in a broth of brine and with onions and potatoes and a sriracha cream. So that's an example of how we could brine the shanks, these tough cuts, make it taste like corned beef or corned venison, corned elk, corned turkey legs and thighs. You can even corn like the whole bottom round and make it like New England boiled dinner. Thank you. So that's one. I'll take this egg off, do up another one, and then it's going to be time for 3 of us to eat. So there's our breakfast appetizer hors d'oeuvres using that pickled, brined, corned elk shanks. So come eat with us from at Outdoor Solutions from fieldtotable.com. Time to eat. Oh yeah, we got time to eat. Time to eat. Okay, so let's take a look at this meat. So this is the toughest cut on the animal. This right here, that shank. And let's just put it here on this plate. Look how tender that is. So, you know, if you wanted to make pulled elk shank meat for a barbecue or something like that, cook it the same way. Just don't use the pickling spice. Don't even use a brine. Slow cook it in a pressure cooker or in a Instapot, or just slow cook it in a crock pot until the meat comes apart like that. And there you go, you got your pulled elk shanks, which eat really, really good. And they're large. You see, we got them really, you know, it's a big piece of meat. It's not the little, like a little deer shank or the leg or thigh of a turkey. So let's. Tastes better than corned beef. So we got a broth here with some onion, potato. Oh, and that sriracha cream. That sriracha cream really makes that taste good. We can just pull that meat apart with a spoon. Look at that. You guys are going to love this, but you're not going to get that. That little pepper, I like that pepper on the garnish here. That's nice and crunchy. My dinner, you guys got to split that one. So there we go, we have it. Brined elk shanks that we made like corned beef. We cooked them in a broth. We got a poached egg on there. Come meet with us at Outdoor Solutions from fieldtotable.com.